Welcome to AkronHipHop.com, where we paint positive images of our people every single day. My name is Deborah Calhoun, and I teach at Kent State University in the Department of Pan-African Studies. Hey, Hiram, how are you today?
I am doing okay. Hey, I'm definitely feeling great. We're outside. You looking beautiful.
Absolutely.
You are one with the art behind you and everything. Tell everybody what we're doing today.
Today we are continuing our journey for the beginning Black history books that every person of color with some melanation in the nation can use in their home for educating not only themselves, their children, their family, their relatives, their neighborhood, the community, and the world. Our book today is a classic, and it's from none other than Lerone Bennett. If you remember the name, and you know Ebony Magazine, you know they were like peas and carrots. Lerone Bennett produced this book before the Mayflower as a series of editorials, short articles added to a monthly Ebony magazine. And collectively, he pulled these editorials and combined them into a text called Before the Mayflower, 1619 to 1964. And it's a history of the Negro, which was then what we were called, in America. And what I like about this book is that it takes our journey from the American side. Not to say that that's the only side, but we know that once we were scattered through the slave trade, we landed here in North America. So he picks up the journey here in North America, starting with our arrival, which was before the Mayflower, the boat which brought the Puritans in 1620, I do believe. So he starts our journey in 1609, Jamestown, where the first group of 19 Africans were dropped off from a Spanish ship. And the core of this book begins how we were able to shape not only the early colonial experience of the Americas, but how we have historically, from our arrival to this country, shaped every major facet of social, economic, political, historical development here in the United States. Starting with 1609, he talks about Jamestown. He talks about African Americans in the Revolutionary period. That is that period where we broke from King George and declared independence, beginning with Crispus Attucks. But he also talks about how free persons in the North had their ear on freedom. Even though freedom was not talked about, freedom was only discussed in relation to the colonies' freedom from King George. Africans easily understood that freedom was for them also, even though it was not said, it was not written. It's the subtext of what was going on. In fact, the first person who died in the Revolutionary period was a person of African descent, even though freedom was not for him. So he begins our story with, or continues the story with not only the Revolutionary period, but talks about slavery proper. Those slaves, how they were able to shape the economy of not only the South, but of the North. Their work was key to the development of the colonies, because remember, that's free labor. And as I remind my students, anyone who was able to take command of people's labor for 300 years and benefit from that and not pay the laborers, but benefit from their labor, that's a come up. And we know that the colonies came up as a result of that free labor in the North American context. He then shifts and talks about slave revolts, because we know whenever there is oppression, there is resistance. So from our moment of arrival here, we resisted slavery in both the formal means, that is those riots, rebellions, insurrections, and even the informal means, breaking tools, playing sick, playing ignorant, pretending to not know information. We fought in both the formal and in the informal way. After those slave revolts got established, we know that the Civil War becomes critical and points central even to the survival of the United States. In fact, even though the Civil War was not fought to end slavery, Africans, in terms of expressing their self-determination, made that the issue, made that the course of the day. We know that would culminate in the participation of Black men through the Civil War, the U.S. 6th Cavalry and the 54th Regiment, Boston, Massachusetts. If you saw the movie Glory, you know what that deal was about. He shifts then to emancipation and freedom. and how this country began to hold back African development through Jim Crow laws, through black codes, through various ways to which they kept African American free and newly freed Africans out of the body politic. Violations in terms of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, of course. He shifts the discussion to key people who were part of that transition from slavery to freedom. That is Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. Now, if you heard those names before, remember we talked about them a couple of series ago when we talked about those men of importance who made that transition to freedom much more critical and important. From the discussion of freedom, we shift then to our role in the civil rights movement. We know that people like Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Stokely Carmichael, later Kwame Ture, James Meredith, SNCC, the brother who just died recently, John Lewis. All of these folks are critical then to this transition of fighting for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to be lived in its fullest expression. And that's where he ends the book. This is just a short version of it. I know it's not everything in the book, but I do know it's an easy read, beginning with the African past, all the way up to the modern present, and how we even have a role in today's world and politics. So that's it for Before the Mayflower, Lerone Bennett, easy read, classic. If you got the old ebonies, flip through them and read them individually as editorial pieces if you have them. And that's it for my journey today. Remember, I'm Deborah Calhoun. I have been your host today. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can follow me at Diamond in the Rough, Designs by Deborah, YouTube, Diamond in the Rough, History Sister on Twitter. And if you're on Instagram, I'm Rough Diamond 824. And remember, if you see this video on Facebook, share, like. Remember to each one teach one, rinse and repeat, each one teach one. And of course, you can see me on AkronHipHop.com. Thank you, and Brother Hiram, I thank you so much for the time today.